Welcome, I'm Victoria. It's nice to have you here at Hot Cocoa and Books. Today I'm going to go over 2 completed June readathons. I also have an arc to talk about, and I started working on 2 other readathons for the summer. If you're new here, I give a lot of content warnings. Let's get started because there's going to be a lot of books to talk about. For the Red, White, and June readathon, one of the major prompts was to read a nonfiction book. That is something I love to read as it is. Twas Seeding Time. This one I like less than the My Loyalist Origins book that I talked about, but there were some really nice parts in here that you could learn from and enjoy, but it's very dry. Again, if you're not familiar with what the Mennonites believe, which I am a Mennonite, is that we typically want to be peacemakers. We don't choose a side with war. We don't believe in taking the life of another because everyone is made in the image of God. Those people are the ones that we should be witnesses to spread the gospel rather than bringing death to them so that they don't have that chance. A lot of this talks about the oaths. Now, we don't believe in swearing and making oaths based off of scripture that says you should not pledge or give an oath to anything. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And that God is the only one that you put your devotion to. So during the Revolutionary War, what this talks about is that a lot of people had to carry these oath things to try to say who they were because Mennonites did not believe in being on a side. They were automatically made Tories because they weren't going against the king. What I liked about the beginning of this book is it talked about the hardships that Mennonites had during the 1600s and the 1700s with dealing with the Native Americans because they don't believe in fighting them. A lot of times people that were natives would confuse the Mennonites with the people that were cruel to them. Most of the Mennonites, if they were attacked, they just willingly let them be attacked. They did not fight them because they wanted to show love to their neighbor. And so there were some scalpings talked about because of that. It was really heartbreaking. But then I also talked about the friendships they formed because of over time getting to know each other. So they were standing in the gap for the Native Americans. But then it goes into the revolutionary time. It goes into this really good story that I want to share with you. It reminded me of the story where Jesus told everyone to cast the first stone if they were without sin to the adulterous woman. But this was where this young kid who was a teenager, he went into a tavern, and because he was a Mennonite, he was told that he was a Tory, and he's like, well, you shouldn't talk like that. That kid got accused and brought to court, and they wanted to tar and feather him because of his loyalist ways for not going against the king. And he said, well, I'm not against the king. I'm not against anyone. They were trying to figure out who would tar and feather this young man. You got to some guy saying, well, tar and feather yourself, because no one could stand up and do it to this young man who was so bold and confident in God. He started to tar himself and put feathers on himself. And eventually they told him, stop, go home. And they let him go. And it was so touching that I was so amazed by that story, because this is why we are to live out the gospel in such a way to be like, hey, what are you doing? And you're going to put him to death because he won't choose a side. I love that. This book, as much as I hoped it would be amazing, it wasn't that great. It was kind of just boring, to be honest with you, but I did get some good things from it. And 'Twas Seeding Time, they were saying this was the seeding time, that when they're under pressure and that when everyone is against them, they decided to give the gospel to everyone. The Lacemaker. So I've been reading some Laura Francis books now. All year, it seems. This is the 3rd book I've read this year by her, and I had not read any of her works before this year. I was really interested in this one, and her writing is beautiful. I love her details. This is a book about a woman. Her name is Elizabeth, but she also goes by Liberty because her mother really wanted her to have that name. Her father's a loyalist. And what I really liked about this book is it tells you about what a loyalist would view a patriot as and what a patriot would view a loyalist as, and the different struggles that they would go through by having that. This goes in Red, White, and June for Secrets and Spies because of the fact that she had a loyalist father throughout this story. She was friends with some people that were patriots. People thought maybe she was a spy of some sort. And so the story goes a little bit beyond that. Elizabeth, she is to marry this one man. This man just like doesn't show up to anything. And she's all excited about her wedding and planning it. But every time there's an event where he's supposed to show up, he sends someone else. So at one point he sends this other guy who's Welsh, and the two of them form a bond. They get to know each other. She is also a lacemaker and very talented at it. So she makes her own business for money because there are hardships with being a loyalist in the area where she lives. While I really wanted to love this book, I felt like there were all these great solutions, quick things that happened. They just didn't seem correct to me. Like it was just, oh, well, there's this problem. But then within a few pages, it's like, oh, everything's okay now. Content, there was a little bit of an intimate, passionate kissing scene, if that bothers you, but it becomes closed door. There are lies and deceit. There is espionage, there's war, there's talk about injuries, there's even talk about people needing to be put in facilities for their mental health, there's talk about a man having a mistress, there are threats made, there's kidnapping. I feel like this book is like, almost all of her books are kind of like drawn out. Like they have these times where it's just like kind of slow. And then there are these fast-paced things. And so there is a lot of buildup in this book. I felt like it was sometimes too slow, but it was an average and good read. And I do think the romance was like, I don't know. This romance to me was so. I had a hard time with the relationship that takes place in this. Like I didn't feel connected is what I'm saying. For a fictional story set in Revolutionary era, this one I could kind of have 3 books available, maybe even 4 books available for this, but 2 of them are historical fiction where they were real people that existed, but the book is fictional. I'm gonna place A Founding Mother as the fiction book because it was just so good, and I felt like I should put that as like the best book out of all of these that I read for the Red, White, and June. So I felt like it had to be on here, but I do have backups if that one doesn't really count. So A Founding Mother is about Abigail Adams. Abigail and John Adams, they're like my favorites out of all the presidents and the wives. I enjoy learning about them. I've read other books about them, books about their letters. They're just very interesting to me. This book was really long. I would have liked it to be kind of reduced a bit. There's a lot of information about this, and I feel like it was about halfway through the book that there could have been stuff taken out. But I loved being inside of Abigail Adams' head throughout this. And I love her marriage, even though there were some struggles, the fact that they loved each other so deeply that they were able to go through hard times together. And sometimes though, Abigail, she had to be on her own a lot, raising her children that were young. She went through really difficult times. And I can't imagine doing that as a mother without the help of my spouse. And the reason is because at one point, John Adams goes to France. And so this book is about when she formed a relationship with her husband and their life together with each child that they had, and then going through their old age, what they had to go through and the struggles. And wow, it was hard. I can't imagine like her motherhood. So much heartache. And I need to say for the content, there is a scene where John and Abigail are like laying next to each other and they are very into each other and they want to be intimate and they're excited about it, but it's closed door. They don't talk details about anything they do. And then there's even a part where they're talking about their daughter who gets married, and John is so funny because he wants to go and help his daughter because she's so innocent and he wants to like rescue her, like saying like about her wedding night, and he's scared for her. It's cute as a father. Abigail's like, she'll be fine, you know, but what if he's not nice to her? Oh, she's fine. It was just like the whole scene though, even the scene like after that, it was just so funny. I just thought it was humorous and really good, but that is part of the content that they talk about without being expressive of sex. They talk about consummating things. There's a lot of loss of children from infancy through adult years. It is really, really sad. There's illness, there's death, there is an epidemic, there is violence, war talk, mention about people that were not faithful to their spouses. There are people that gamble, they're drunk. The most severe thing talked about is someone has breast cancer and they actually talk about how they remove the breast without like anything that we would do today. So that is kind of graphic, so just be aware of that. There's talk about slavery, injustices, and there is the long B word, and that is the content in here. But it was an excellent book. I really enjoyed it. I thought, again, it was a little bit long, but it was so good. So my backups, which I even have a mini version, because this was my sister-in-law's and I'm trying to sell her American dolls and we can't find her Felicity doll yet, but we have her little book. I never read these as a child. I didn't have the dolls and I thought back then that you had to read these if you only had the dolls. I don't know why I thought that. I finally was able to read them. They were short, they were sweet, they were okay. Felicity Saves the Day. I read this for a book club that I'm a part of, and I'm glad I read this because these two go hand in hand, even though this one's the 5th book. this is the first book. I've not read the in-between books, but these totally you could read side by side because they make sense. In the first book, we have Felicity. She is living in colonial Williamsburg, and everything seems honky-dory for her. She kind of is a little bit selfish and whiny at times, but she also has a sense of wanting to rescue a horse from its owner who is not treating it well. And what I got from this, there is a mention of a slave at one point, and I was thinking about, as a child, if I read this, would I put a connection about how you see someone being mistreated that's a slave that you want to help rescue it, but they have a horse being mistreated to rescue, and it was in the back of my head while reading this, like, she sees mistreatment around her, but we're just going to talk about the horse. That's what the first one is about. I honestly don't think she's a good role model for girls just because she goes behind her parents' back, she disobeys them, she is very crafty and deceitful, and that to me is just like, you could teach good lessons about don't be like Felicity if you have kids that want to read this. But I did not like the ending. I felt it was like, what? It just ended abruptly. So maybe the second book has more, but it was just like weird. So I didn't really care too much for the first book, to be honest with you. And so for Felicity Saves the Day, which again was for a book club, in this book, she goes to visit her grandfather. Her grandfather has his own plantation. He's rich. He has slaves. She misses this one apprentice that her father has named Ben back home. What I did like is I learned about the game Battledore and Shuttlecock. That was interesting because it was kind of like badminton. I even went and looked up paintings from that time of people playing it. I was just fascinated by that. Again, I have a hard time with the oppression because here they were saying at one point that some slave owners mistreated their slaves. And I was thinking, like, in my head, I'm like, anyone that owns anyone is mistreating their slave and should not have a slave. But this was a great summertime book, much better than the first one. But again, there are secrets kept from parents. There's talk about war in this and mistreatment of a runaway. The last prompt was courage in a petticoat for the red, white, and June. So I have now finished the entire board, Taking Liberty, the story of Oney Judge, who was George Washington's runaway slave. Actually, she was Martha Washington's slave. Now, I have read one other book about Oney Judge, which when I saw this, I was like, Oney Judge? I thought it was Oney Judge. And I got so confused. Then I remembered, like, yesterday, like, oh yeah, I read that Oney Judge book years ago now. And I'm like, all right. The other book was actually better than this one, and that one was average for me too, but this one, this is about Oney's life from her perspective, growing up under Martha Washington with her mother, who was a slave, and her father, who was an indentured white man, and then becoming the main prized maid, and how much Martha really, really adored her and trusted her and had her follow her around doing everything for her. And then eventually what got her to decide to leave. And eventually she got interviewed. George Washington wanted her back. There were laws up north during this time in certain states where slavery was not allowed. And when she was in Virginia, where she had lived, there was slavery. It was acceptable there. A lot of times they would go up to those states. Various things that she would talk about, like, should I go now? And then they would go back to Mount Vernon, and then they would go back to another state. And so she had to plan and figure out when to leave, and it surprised everyone. For content in this, like, this doesn't talk in depth about a lot of the oppression. It doesn't give you much. Let's low-key talk about the slavery without really talking in depth about what they would have gone through, all of the slaves that belonged to the Washingtons. They kind of made it seem better than it probably was. There was nothing sexual at all talked in this, nothing at all. Even her parents, I don't even know if her parents were married, but they made them married in this, and I don't know if they were. There were just things in her life that they kind of like didn't talk about. And they made it seem like her mom was like this evil person and Martha Washington wasn't. Like, to me, it's just weird how this was written. There is an epidemic that happens in this. And then there's also talk about the promises made by the loyalists to those who would run away that were slaves, and something that happened to a whole bunch of them. It was really sad. That would be the worst part of this story. There is death of some people mentioned in this. There was talks about voodoo and conjuring something up. It was brought up like 2 or 3 times in this. It wasn't a great book, and thankfully I got through it quickly, but I don't know. For Picnic in June, what's the setting is the question for this. And if I go under J, I chose Mountain, a book that has been on my TBR list for actually a long, long time, because I used to own this book when I was a teenager. When I started watching Christy, it came out when I was a teenager. I loved the show. I loved it so much. Kelly Martin is excellent in it. Oh, I just loved it. And I watched it all the time. And I didn't really watch TV, but Christy, I was like, I have to read this book. And so when I was a teen, the book was gigantic for me. And I was like, I couldn't. I like read maybe 50 pages and then I just remember having the bookmark in it for years. And then finally I just donated the book. But now now that I'm an actual reader, this book actually, the author, it's about her mother. I did some research and she said that she did change like about a quarter of the story. So this is a historical fiction, but it's also part biography. If you don't know the story of Christy, she is this teacher. She goes into the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, which is a lovely place. I've been there. And there are a bunch of mountain people. They don't really know how to read. And when she's there, she's like very blunt about how stinky they are, how they don't brush their teeth. She can't stand being around them because she's like, she says it a bunch of times, like the hygiene really affected her. But yeah, the place is called Cutter Gap. There are other people there that are educated. One that grew up in the area that became a doctor. There's a preacher. There is a Quaker woman who is there. And so she forms bonds with all of these people, plus the mountain people she forms bonds with and makes friends with over time, including some of her students that she gets to know. In the background, we have stuff about moonshine and people that are doing things illegally. There is someone that gets murdered at one point and someone accused. So there's a lot of that in this story. This is a 5-star read and it's my 4th 5-star read of this whole year. The whole time I'm reading this, we have such deep faith throughout it. I love the conversations about faith. I loved the stories, especially Miss Alice's story. So amazing. She is an inspiration to everyone and I loved her on the show. The show did really well at following the book, but the faith was just so strong. And I feel, you know how we have the Christy Award because of this book? You have a lot of shoes to have to fill for this. It like really set the bar really high. Like you really have to have a good book like Christy. So no wonder why we have this award. It is so good. And the fact that this Christian book got so well known throughout the country. So anyway, Christy throughout this book, she struggles between kind of understanding her own faith because she was asked a question by the doctor who is kind of struggling with his faith, what she believes, because she kept like comparing it to other things and what she was raised believing. So she has to make her faith her own. And then there is the story between finding love in this book as well, but it's not that focused. The focus is mainly on the people and her interactions with everyone. There are lots of characters that are brought up here and there. It's easy to follow. This might be the best book I've read all year so far. For content, of course, there are people that drink, they get drunk. There are kissing scenes that kind of like not just light kisses. There is someone who is raped and impregnated. There are some marriages that are talked about of young girls, teen girls that are married. There are lies and deceit. Of course, I said there is murder, there are injuries, there are people that have illnesses, there's death, and it's like really sad, a lot of these scenes. Some of them like really, really wrenched my heart, especially one scene about a baby death, just so you know, like, wow, that one hit me. There is smoking. There is a weird ritual for a wedding. There are mentions throughout this book like about talking about sex and how it is presented in the mountains compared to what Christy grew up with. And there's even this stalker. You don't really hear much. It's like someone's protecting someone from a stalker at one point. That's all. Back to A Picnic in June. One of the questions is, what else are you doing? There is, through Jamie, there was something about tea party. I was like, oh, well, Tea with Elephants has been on my reading list for the year. So Tea with Elephants. I'm not going to talk really crazy about this because I do want to say, I want to give a shout out to Kay because she has a Patreon and she'll be reading this in July. So make sure if you want to read that with her whole group that she has on Patreon, I will be discussing this with her in July. Be ready with that. So I'm not going to talk too crazy about this because I want to save all that information. I took lots of notes on this book. It was sweet. I liked it. Again, like I read this in between a lot of these heavy stories that I talk about. This was a nice, clean, palate cleansing book that I needed. This is about Fern and Lily. They met in Costa Rica when they were teenagers on a missions trip. They became friends. They kept in touch even though they live in different states. They found love. We learn about each of their stories and they each have a struggle that they are going through. They go to Kenya together. It is something that they had planned for a long time and they finally were able to go. You have that underlying issue underneath their joy and their fun that they're having together. So every once in a while they talk about it. It's like kind of weird because we learn a lot about African animals throughout this. And I felt like I would like a little bit more talk about the people and what they're going through than the this stuff, but oh my goodness, you get such a beautiful picture of what Kenya would be like. But I also think that the way that we view Kenya in this is through the lens of white privileged people. And I'm going to say that, yes, I am going to say that. Don't be mad at me. 40% of Kenya is starving and living in poverty. So yes, they're all at resorts, they're getting massages, they're going on safaris. And the only time you get something that's like real about the people in there is they go to a marketplace and a woman is in charge of them, and yes, but still they're like protected, and then they go back to a vehicle. Like there's not really many problems except for what they're dealing with back home. So for me, I wanted a little more Kenyan culture in my story. This is a feel-good, wonderful book if you need something like that. But because I read so many difficult books and books about oppression and stuff, I guess I wanted some realism in here, and there wasn't enough of that. But what they each are going through is something that would be hard. We do have that. But again, it's first world problems. And then there are these quick solutions at the end too. And I'm like, okay, great. So it was good. I had fun reading it. I gave it 3.25 stars. And the only content that I could warn you about is there are animals that, animals eat animals. That's pretty much it. Again, I'm not going to talk in depth about what they're going through or anything. That will be when I have my chat with Kay. I hope it goes well. Now there is a bonus prompt in this A Picnic in June, and that is to read a favorite book from one of the birthday girls. Since all of these 5 women have had birthdays. 3 of them have already celebrated their birthday by the time I'm recording this, and maybe even the other 2. I asked a few of them, what's your favorite book? And I went to some of their Goodreads to try to find it. It was very difficult. One person who responded right away, and that was Lindsay, and Thursday Murder Club. And I said, hey, is this really one of your favorites? And she's like, yes, I wanted to read the book. So here I am. Now that I read Thursday Murder Club, I must say that it was very, very close to the movie. They did a good job. And I know it's a little bit crazy, but I might have liked the movie better. But this was really good. And there's no language in this. And I was surprised because I was like, wow, this is great. We need more books like this where we could have like a cozy mystery of sorts. Like it wasn't really cozy, but it's a murder mystery. We're finding out clues. So what's this about? We have Joyce. She's writing in her diary different entries, and we're learning that she is new to this village. And the village is filled with people that are retired and very old, or maybe they're, just trying to have community there and make friends. Maybe their family is not as involved in their lives. They each have like apartments and places in this village. It's very nice sounding the way they describe all the fun things that they have available. And so we have Ron, Ibrahim, Elizabeth, and Joyce. And Joyce is the newbie. They have this murder club where they go over these cases. Now, each of them have a certain type of job that they once had. They're all retired. And Elizabeth's especially is very interesting. And they also had a former member named Penny, and she has a husband named John, but Penny is not doing that well, so she's not really involved. So now we have this group of 4 people. We learn a little bit about their lives, what they're like. And Elizabeth is like the main focus. Even though Joyce is writing this, she's like writing a lot about Elizabeth throughout this because she's like the one that's pretty much ahead of this whole group. And there's this case from the 70s that gets brought up at some point. But what happens is someone gets murdered, someone that is very important to the village. And so everyone's talking like, what happened? And it wasn't an accident. It was someone murdered. And then it brings on a lot of investigating that works there. There's also this one cop help her get her dream job of investigating murders. So they're like, oh, we're going to help you out. So now they have her involved with trying to help her as she also includes them, which she probably shouldn't be doing. There were a lot of characters. So honestly, if I didn't watch the movie first, I'd probably be lost because you guys know I don't do well with loads of characters thrown at me, and there were a lot of characters thrown, but I was like, okay, well, I know who that is, and I could picture the actor for each person, which I know is like weird, but that's how I was viewing them. My only issue with this book is that there is no real sense of justice. It's like there are these excuses or things are kind of let go a lot. That kind of bothered me, but it also was lovely how it was done. So I was like, okay, it's sad in a way for some people, but it's also like, I can't give away spoilers. So I'll just leave it at that. For content, there is talk and mention of suicide. There is someone that had been impregnated out of wedlock, and it's brought up. And this is the only thing that would be sexual in the entire thing, would be the impregnated out of wedlock without any details. And also it would be this where they talk about Tinder and people having one night stands. And that was like all that was brought up. And with the murders, it was described how some of these murders took place. But yeah, it was relatively clean and very good. I had fun. So thank you, Lindsay, for having this in your book list that I could this was a mood read to me because I was just kind of looking in your list and I was like, you know what? I need to read a good mystery. I haven't read one in a while. And usually I read an Agatha Christie book every month and I haven't in a couple months. I got to read this. Now I'm going to go to my own summertime board. Now I had island vibes. Right away, I knew what I wanted to do. Now this one could actually, if you are doing my bingo, you could also put this for a sea creature because it's the shark house and it's a lot about sharks, but it does have a little bit of content. So I'm warning you about that. The Shark House, I've been wanting to read this all year. When I heard about this book coming out, I had been I can't wait to read it. So I was like, but I want to wait till summertime because I am a seasonal reader. This takes place in 1998, and we do get backdrop stories throughout the early 90s in this. This is about Minnow, which I love her name. That is so cute. If you love the ocean or whatever, that is adorable. Minnow is a marine biologist. She studies sharks. She loves sharks so much, but she has a big fear of sharks at the same time. She has reason for that. She is trying to overcome things from her past. Big time. And that is the whole theme of this book. This is set in Hawaii, so there's the island for you, just so you know. She lives in California and she goes over to Hawaii, and there she finds out that there is a shark attack that happened to someone famous. So she has to investigate the shark to see, well, I gotta look at the bites. And she stays at this one house. The house has some history that we learn about, has stories that are very important for Minnow. She has some shaky memories. She doesn't really remember them. She starts to uncover these memories while she's doing this investigating. This was a little bit weird at times because I'm like, okay, we're learning a lot about sharks here, and sometimes it's repetitive about what she is learning. There are some interesting characters in this. There's also a mysterious character that she's getting to know, but this surprisingly had a very cute ending. But the book is pretty sad. This is very much about finding your passion, something that you could believe in, standing up for yourself, and finding your home. So for content, I had no idea what kind of content was in this book when I went into it. I looked up information, I couldn't find anything. When I got to page 220, there started to become a sexual scene in here, PG-13 style. There's no sex, fade to black, but you get a little bit too much. I don't want to give you which base it goes to because I feel so childish saying that, even though I've been married 22 years. My point is that there is a bit of a sexual scene in here. It's mainly a makeout scene, and there is just one thing that just came out of nowhere. Pretty much figure out that there is sex that happens, but there's no details of that. There is talk about suicide in this. There's violence. There are shark attacks. And what happens if you're attacked by a shark? I'm gonna say there were 2 handfuls of F words in this, and same with S words, about 20 bad words altogether. There were a couple misuses of the word hell, and there were a couple uses of the D word. Becoming Lottie Moon. For my summertime bingo, while I'm reading this, I was like, okay, cool. I didn't plan for this book to land here, but it's on here. And that is the barbecue or gathering of food. There is a scene in this where they are having a picnic, a full family, uncles and a bunch of people. They're having pie together. It's a gathering. And then they even have dinner gatherings later on. I was like, there are several gatherings in here of eating food. I'm putting it in. Becoming Lottie Moon. If you don't know who Lottie Moon is, it's okay. I didn't really know either. She was a missionary in China. I found out about this from Lindsay, who does books for girls, a year ago. She talked about this, or she brought it up, and I was like, I love reading books about missionaries. So I was like, I'm gonna read this. So it was a unique way of explaining Lottie Moon's childhood up until the point that she becomes a missionary. She goes through a lot of faith issues where she decides I don't really believe in God anymore, even though she was raised in a Christian environment, but then her struggle of what gets her back there. This book starts when she's about 6 years old, but I have to warn you. So I had this copy for my Nook. It was a digital book. I was reading through the chapters, not really paying attention to the numbers, but things were not sounding right. And then I realized towards the end of the book that they went from chapter 31 to chapter 17 and then chapter 27. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to read these out of order. So I'm warning you. Pay attention to if you read this that way, if you don't get a physical copy, it's a little messed up. So this is set in the time before the Civil War. She lives in the South and her family has slaves. So I'm going to tell you that this is another thing where I'm having a hard time reading this, where I'm like, wow, they have all these slaves and Lottie sort of has empathy for them. Her dad slightly does, but no, they're not freeing their slaves. Her mom doesn't want to free any slaves. Then the Civil War happens. Then they have to free the slaves. So it's It's just like, I had a hard time with these Christians and they're talking all about their faith and loving people and being missionaries throughout the book, because she has an uncle and aunt that had been a missionary family with their kids. It's just hard for me. Slavery is like my heartstring. I know that in the past, like this, we can't change Lottie Moon's family and how they were raised into thinking that this was right. That was the way of life. I can't change that. So I had to just go like, okay, this is what their family would have felt like having these slaves, just whatever, like you're my property. And at times they had one of their slaves like a perspective from them. So I thought that was interesting. And I did not like that this wasn't completely about Lottie Moon. It was a lot about her sister, Oney. Like it jumped from different people. And I wanted to just know about Lottie Moon. If you're going to say becoming Lottie Moon, give me her story. You don't have to go on and on about her sister falling in love when she's 15 with this guy that's her tutor. And then like, it's not even an important part of the story. So I had a hard time loving this. I wanted to love it, but I didn't. There was good faith elements. And I really liked learning about Lottie's mind and what she was going through and how she was like really anti-God for a while. It was pretty deep, that part, but it was just way too long. This could have been so much shorter. And there were some tragic things throughout the book with her family, what they went through. It was an average story for me. There is a seance experience with, again, this was about her sister. They didn't need to put this in here. I don't understand why they did that. There is loss, there is grief. There is a prank that Lottie pulls at one point. So this book does end in 1871, and that is around the time that she became a missionary, which she had a younger sister who was a missionary in China as well. And I'm like, I want to know about her too. Like they hardly talked about her younger sister in this book because they had an age gap. And then the arc, finally talking about this, guys. This is the third book I've read by this author. So I got this as part of a team for the author, Pamela Desmond Wright. I really love her writing. I'm having fun reading whatever she's been writing lately. So I was excited to be a part of this team. But I don't think this was a good title for this book. And I'm going to tell you why. This story is about not Annika so much, more about Elam or Elam. I think Elam would be how you would say it. He's this guy that had been a part of the Amish community and he is gone. He has been in Rumspringa for a long time. He loves to work on cars. He's a mechanic. He does these races with his 1970 Dodge Challenger RT. And yes, I know actually a lot about cars, guys, so that's why I remembered the type. Point is, there is an accident that happens involving the brother of this young woman, and this is Annika or Annika. So to me, Elam would be more reluctant than Annika, and that is because she has something that she's gone through. She is struggling with a lot of grief, actually, and she's doing her best to help her father who's paralyzed. I have a father-in-law who's paralyzed and has been for 36 years. So like I could kind of relate to my husband's situation growing up and having to care for his dad here and there. But it was like more sudden for her father. It was like newer. She's doing her best to take care of things. She's not really a part of the community as much as she had been. And I can feel for her because she just has a lot of stress on her. To me, she's more reluctant because she won't be as involved and she resists being more a part of it. But to me, Elam would be more reluctant because he doesn't really want to go back to the Amish lifestyle and really is struggling with his faith and has people in his life that he is not getting along with, and he kind of blames God for certain things in his life. But he's a really sweet guy and she's really sweet. So the two of them, with their own struggles, they start to really communicate well. And this is what I love about her writing. The way she has people learn about each other, communicate with each other, it's wonderful. The building of love, romance, I love how she writes about that. And then God starts to change both of their hearts over time, and it is really lovely how they encourage one another. I love how God makes himself known to like Elam. It's really cool. For content, there are people that are injured, there's death, there's grief, there are struggles, there's that pull for God. But this was really excellent. For the most part, I really loved this book. I read it in a day, like I said I would, because it was just, I get sucked into her writing. I just think that the titles doesn't work with it. But it was, look at this beautiful cover though. I love the covers for like all her books. Like this is really pretty. And what I like about this was I know where it's set because I struggled with her other books of where the setting was. And this one I think was Wisconsin. So that was like nice to know. Man, my pile here. I forgot to mention, this fit my wedding for my summertime bingo. There is a wedding in this story. I got to fill that in. I had another book planned for wedding, but because there was a wedding in this, I was like, bingo. One more book to talk about. I told you this would be a hefty one because of all these readathons. Next book was excellent. I read it in a day. Really, really good. I got hooked, like big time. Not a 5-star read, but it was up there. It was past 4 stars. And for this one, for Chantel Reads All Day, her Passport to Summer Reading, this one I had wanted for, she has the 5 W's, which is like if you use the who, what, when, where, why, who, what, when, why. You know what I mean. So anyway, I who have never known men, this has been on my TBR list for the year. So yes, I am cutting through these lists that I've had. It was the only one that I think that I right away was like, I know what I want to read for this. I've been wanting to read this book for over a year now. Whenever this came out, I was very interested in it. I kind of thought it was going to be something completely different, to be honest with you. I was pleasantly surprised by what it was about. I've heard varying responses to this book, some that are really, really positive and some that are like, what did I just read? I didn't expect this. This pretty much like a dystopian story. So this is about a teen girl. She's surrounded by 39 women. She is kept in a bunker. They all are, and they all wear like the same thing, kind of like a nightgown of sorts. And she's called the Child throughout this book. No one really knows what her name is. She doesn't know her own name. We don't know much about her background. She doesn't really talk to the people there, but she's starting to recognize and learn the things that go on and when things happen. And she's like really good at calculating things. They had tried to teach her how to write and read and do calculations. So it just kind of like clicks one day. She's about 14 years old. She's never had a period. And you need to know that there are mentions about periods a lot in this book. There are also mentions of her at one point. This is like the only content really that you need to be concerned about in this book. If this really bothers you, for me, it doesn't so much because it felt more scientific than anything, but she does try to learn about her body because she doesn't have a period and she's heard about what a period is. She does try to discover her body, not sexually at all, because she doesn't know anything. And so she's like trying to educate herself about who she is. So she does explore, but like I said, not sexually, her internal part. So that might be gross for people. For me, you could tell me all your TMI stuff. It doesn't really bother me. I'm actually fascinated by like how the woman's body works, but it probably would for others. So that's why I'm bringing this up. There are men around that are guarding them and they don't interact with the men. And she's noticing the men, they're all old. And so, you know, she's like, oh, and she starts to realize like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be a mother. And so she starts to talk to these women. Finally, they get these interactions and then something happens. And I can't give you anything else from that, but it is like fascinating what she learns over time, what the women go through. I felt like I was learning with the main character. And this is actually a very sad book, but it felt kind of peaceful too. There is some death and assisted death. There are people that are drugged. There are injuries. There's discoveries of death. There is a passing statement of 2 women being lovers. There's nothing beyond that ever mentioned. That's like all it says. There is suicide, a sip of alcohol. There's no sex. There's no language. This is one of those books that when you read it, like you're left with questions. If you are going through this, like you won't have answers. I felt like I was this girl learning where I didn't know what was going on around me. I like answers to questions, but this one I was like, I can't get those. And sometimes in life, I won't get those. Yeah, I want it, but yeah, we don't know. And that might upset people and bother people that you don't know. You just won't. Okay, guys, I know that was a lot of books. If you actually listen to all of that, you're amazing. You could listen at 2 times speed, whatever you want to do. I just am thankful you are here and I hope you're having a good summer. I have basically read a book every single day this month, maybe, but a lot of them were small. Like I said, like this one was small. Yeah, keep reading, have an enjoyable time. And I'm glad I finished these readathons. Have fun. I gotta go to the library, return a whole lot of these. Bye.